Hello, this is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. I am your host of this motivational and inspirational podcast. And today I want to talk about ask or asking. If we look in the dictionary, the word ask, and I'm looking at Oxford Languages, say something in order to obtain an answer or some information. And then the second definition is request someone to do something or to give something. And as a noun, it is stated at a request, especially for a donation. So we have a noun and then we have a verb. Now, as I continue looking up dictionary.com, that definition, this passage, or I was looking up a specific passage, and it is in Matthew 7. And if I go to Matthew 7, and I'm going to start at verse 7, ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh, receiveth, and he that seeketh, findeth, and to him that knocketh, it shall be opened. So we know this, we hear this, but do we understand it? Now, in looking for explanations, they are explaining that this passage suggests that God will give whatever is needed to those who have the faith to ask for it. Another suggestion is ask, and to inquire, to seek for counsel, to demand. It is a word commonly used in the Old Testament and is equivalent to a paroto, to request. Used in the New Testament, it does not imply any inferiority on the part of the person asking, or inferiority on the part of the person that's asking. And so when we look at this, we are looking at the fact that God is expecting us to come to Him with whatever it is that we're looking for, that we're needing. And this morning, as I was getting myself prepared for the day, the one thing that I heard in my spirit, ask. Ask. Now, in prayer, whenever I go to God in prayer, I'm thanking Him. I'm praising Him. But the one thing that I don't have in the habit of doing is asking. I plead, for my protection of the children, my grandchildren, my brothers and their families, and different ones that I mention along in my prayer. But the one thing that I heard in my spirit so vividly this morning, ask. Ask. And so I proceeded to go in through my prayer. And as I was going through my prayer, I diligently saw God's face. I asked Him for what I need. And as we all know, God knows our needs before we even make our requests be known. God already knows our needs. He already knows what we need and what is desired in our heart before we even begin, our requests, our suggestions, or pouring out our hearts to Him. He already knows. If we look at Matthew 6 and 8, be not ye therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before he asked him. So the really ironic thing about this is that God is expecting us to ask him for help, not looking for everything or everybody else to do something or to provide or to, whatever we're requesting. God is already knowing our need and what he's placed in my heart and placed in my spirit. Ask. That's all you got to do. We need to stop leaning on our own understanding and thinking that if we just ask people, that they're supposed to give it to us. No, that's not how that works. It's like a beggar that's out on the street. They beg or they make a request known because they're hoping that somebody gets. But when we ask God, we're knowing that he will give. It's a difference. And God can give according to our need, but according to his riches. And so when I sat there in my mind and I'm asking, I'm thinking, God, I need to get this done. I need to get that done. I need to follow through on this. There's just so much to do. And he said, just ask. Just ask. And I'm like, oh. And I know that many times we make things harder on ourselves than we ought to, because we think that this is so hard for us to do, that we have to be super Christians, that we have to be super saved or, super spiritual. But all we got to do is be ourselves. God said, ask, so I asked. And I'm believing that he will come through for me. I am believing that he will supply my needs. I am believing that he will come by and see about me. Not because he said he would, but because I know he would. I know he has before. And when we get to the point in our prayers and in our lives where we think that we have to be super Christians, a super speaker, to speak eloquently and to speak profoundly before God. God just wants us to speak humbly. And he wants us to just ask. So whenever you find yourself in a situation or facing challenges that you really don't know how you're going to get out of, trust me, God already have a plan. I think, have you ever thought that maybe God gets frustrated with us because we won't do the simple things? We make things so complicated and so super spiritual that we don't realize that all he's just asking us to do is a simple thing. Believe. Have faith. Trust. Obey. Seek. Knock. Ask. It's so simple that we make it difficult for ourselves. That we have to be this super Christian. That we have to be on God's level. We can never be on God's level. I don't care how much we try. I don't care what it is that is being stated up on a pulpit, up on a stage or a platform. It doesn't matter what it says. It's all about God whenever you get through. It's not about mankind. Mankind can save us. If mankind could save us, Moses, Joshua, Elijah, Elisha, Job, David, Solomon, Hezekiah, Jonah, all of these men would have gotten us to that salvation part if they could do their job. If we were so much on God's level then they would have been able to do that in the beginning. Adam himself. But we are not on God's level. And we need to stop believing that we are. When the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, where's that fine line in the middle? There's Jesus right there in the middle of everything. He's in the midst. Because those that are super Christians or super seeking Christ, they're on one side. And those that are trying to figure Christ out or getting to know Christ are on the other side. But God, nevertheless, is right there in the middle of everything. Is right there in the middle. Understanding the Word of God is very crucial to our lives. It's very, very critical. It's almost like if you know that you are one injection or one shot away from living. That you know that if you take this medication, it will keep you alive. And you refuse that because of what sounds good, guess what? You're going to die. And the sad thing about it is that there are so many people that are going to die in their sins. They're going to die not knowing who Christ is. They're going to die not knowing what God can do for them because they're listening to hearsay. Hearsay. We're looking at the life of other people. We're looking at the life of what they're living. But we're not asking the question, how did they get it? Did God really give that to them? Or did they get it another means? When God gives us something, God gives us something to sustain us. He doesn't give us all the time something that supersedes us. When children of Israel were promised that land, they had to work for it. It wasn't just given to them. They had to go and obtain it through the power of God. If God just gave it to them, they wouldn't know how to be faithful. They wouldn't know how to trust and believe. They wouldn't have known how to live. Church is supposed to be about teaching individuals how to live their life with Christ, how to live their life for Christ, and not just live the life of luxury without any consequence. I'm not saying that those that live for Christ, there are those that made themselves millionaires doing other things, but then God called them in the ministry. I know that there had been a rapper who went out, believed that he could do something. Now, he was in church, he was preaching, but he left the church. That prodigal son left the church and went and did something miraculously. This man became a millionaire. God allowed him to do that. But with his overspending and with his poor judgment of money, management of money, he lost everything. But he didn't lose God. God kind of let him get that wild hair out of his system. He kind of allowed him to do this thing that had been tickling his fancy so much, but he found out that you can have all of that stuff and lose it. But you can have God and have everything that you need. He found that out. He will always be remembered for the dance, for the style, for the clothes. He's going to always be remembered. But he always had this one mission in his heart, and that was to serve God. And God allowed him to be that prodigal son, to do what he get that wild hair out, but then he came back. And that's the most important thing, to come back. When we ask for something, yes, we got to make sure we be careful what we ask for sometimes. Because God can give us exactly what we want, but it's not the way we want it. And you can look back and say, well, I got what I wanted, but it wasn't what I really wanted. So we got to be careful about what we ask for. But in asking, we got to believe that God will. We need to ask for whatever God's will is for our life, but God knows that we have needs. And when we place those needs at his altar or at his throne, at his feet, he already knew about them. It was just, he was waiting on us to ask. And when we ask, he said, it shall be given. And we have to believe that God will give. I know that this is a little different, but it was important that we bless the Lord with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our heart and spirit, and to give praises unto him. But in the midst, it's okay to ask, as long as we're not asking foolishly or of necessity. We gotta ask, believing that God will. And in doing that, he will supply our needs. This is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. You have yourself a wonderful and blessed day.